What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Beat of KC. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of bringing you Jordan Foote again. Jordan, what is going on, everybody?
Lucas, man, thanks for having me on. It's always a good time to come back on the show. Super excited to chat. Always a fun time.
For sure, man. I was honestly, when I started to kind of really get in the lab, this is what I consider my lab. And I started thinking about, I was watching obviously the Baltimore game. It didn't go the way we wanted it. And I really started to assess and think about, some of the things that have gone into really making this team. And I started thinking about our GM, Brett Veach. Immediately, the first person I thought of talking to was you, man. Honestly, I was excited to do it. And so when I saw you had the mailbag, I definitely wanted to get your guys' thoughts as a group. And so that was a tremendous listen. If you guys haven't had a chance, go listen to that. If you want to give a plug for your stuff, go right ahead, because I thought that was tremendous.
Yeah, man. Roughing the Kicker podcast. Anything Chiefs related 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Mondays we'll do like a game recap. Wednesdays we'll do a mailbag. Fridays we'll do a game preview. So after we hop off here, we're recording this on Thursday night. I'm gonna go edit the episode, publish a YouTube preview. Talked with Fernando Ramirez of the Chargers site with SI. So lots of good stuff there happening.
For sure, for sure. Definitely go check out the work over there. It's incredible. But I was excited, honestly, to talk to you about how each has done, honestly. And we're gonna dive in. I put out a video yesterday, but I think when you kind of can, talk amongst each other, I think it becomes a little bit better. So we're gonna jump into free agents first, and I'm just gonna go from the year he started, which was 2018. Many people believe he started before that. That is not the case. He was a part of the staff in 2017 when Patrick Mahomes was drafted, but he was not the general manager. So in 2018, from a free agent perspective, he signed Dustin Colquitt, re-signed Colquitt, signed DeAnthony Thomas, Anthony Hitchens, Sammy Watkins, Damien Williams, Xavier Williams, Chad Henne, Jeff Allen, and David Amerson. So what I did is I graded each one of these years, kind of to narrow it down. My grade for this year was a B minus, and the reason I did that is because I think Dustin Colquitt was obviously a must. Not necessarily a must, but everything that he provided the Kansas City Chiefs throughout his entire career, I felt like he kind of needed to bring Colquitt back. DeAnthony Thomas could have went. I don't think that was a must. Anthony Hitchens obviously is still performing and playing for us today, signed a pretty lucrative contract. Sammy Watkins, at the time I was ecstatic. I think we, as football fans, were excited because we know what Sammy was capable of doing. Damien Williams, enough said about Damien Williams. The guy could have been the Super Bowl MVP. Xavier Williams, Chad Henne, let's be real. What he was able to accomplish last year playing against the Browns when Mahomes went down, I think that sealed the deal for Chad Henne kind of in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs. Jeff Allen, again, it is what it is with Jeff. David Amerson, I think that speaks for itself. What are your thoughts on 2018's free agent period?
Yeah, man. You mentioned Emerson. I think Orlando Scandrick was one of those veteran cornerbacks too, or was that 2017?
I think it might have been 17. I could have missed one. I
Okay.
really was
I
diving in.
hope. Yeah, because that's another blemish on if it was 18, that's another blemish on the class. But man, Watkins, like that was a decent contract. I think it was a slight overpay when it happened, and now obviously hindsight's 2020. I do like that they structured the deal to where after 2 years they could get out of it if they wanted to. That was interesting. The Hitchens contract was an overpay. He
Mm-hmm.
just now started living up to it even closely.
Yeah.
Last season when he played well. Damien Williams, decent player. Like I think the entire first year of Brett Veach, and we'll talk about the draft and the trades that he made. It was a bumpy start. Like I get the whole redoing some stuff, making some big acquisitions, but he left some to be desired. I liked the ambition year one and the aggressiveness, but the execution, obviously, I'm going to say time and time again, hindsight is 2020. Looking back on it, it's kind of a mixed bag of a first year, especially free agency wise.
Most definitely. Did if you had to give it this year a grade, what would you have given it?
I think a B minus is pretty accurate, like maybe even a C plus. I think
Okay,
it started to lay the foundation for what was ahead. He had a really big 2019 free agency class, and I think that this was kind of an appetizer for that, I guess.
for sure. So 2019, Anthony Sherman, which to me, it is what it is. It always feels like we have to have a fullback just because of Andy. So, he had been with us for a long period of time. I'm okay with that. The Honey Badger. I mean, holy smokes. Pure excitement when he signed. I wanted to draft him. So when that happened, I honestly had to put the car in park, pull over, and just kind of like accept the fact that he was going to be on the team. Like I was that excited. Rashad Brilliant, I was actually pretty hyped about it. I think we needed corners, and I think Breland obviously provided. He was kind of teasing us in training camp that one year, didn't sign and went to the Packers, comes back and then signs with us again, or signs back to the Kansas City Chiefs. So I was excited for Breland for sure. Alex Okafor. And so we'll talk about a move that we made in 2019 from a trade that I think kind of ruined these two players. And one of those is actually Alex Okafor. He was kind of starting to have a good year that year. And then obviously he's kind of been injury prone a little bit since. Damien Wilson, I was super pumped about Damien Wilson. I would have loved to have seen him come back this year. Carlos Hyde. Now, Carlos Hyde actually steamrolled us because he went to the Texans that year, and I think he had a vendetta against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I was actually okay with that signing. I wish he, now looking back on it, I kind of wish he would have made the squad. Blake Bell, obviously, and then Jeremiah Atachu. So I gave this a B plus, and because of the Honey Badger, I almost upgraded it to an A minus. What are your thoughts?
Literally, like if you would have asked me for my opinion before you spoke, I would have gave you the same thing. Like the B plus A minus range. I think that the Matthews signing was the big shark of that group. It's arguably the best free agent signing in franchise history, a huge deal. You can't give him anything less than like a B or a B plus just because of that. And you look at Bashad Breeland, he turned out to be a decent player for the Chiefs, a reliable starting cornerback. Okafor, little lucrative on the contract. I didn't love that move when it happened. Had some upside. Carlos Hyde, he turned out to have a good season after he left, so I don't hold that against Brett Veach for the poor fit or whatever.
Yeah.
Damien Wilson, just kind of the ancillary moves after that. I think Matthew really the big fish in the pond, the guy that they really needed the most and helped really complete that off season, and then he made the big trade afterwards. So this was really, we mentioned 2018 is like setting up for something big. 2019 was the I'm going to go out there and make stuff happen year for him.
For sure. This next one, when I did this, I think I almost sat back and kind of had to take a minute, and I was like, was he drunk when he did this free agent period? Like, what was he thinking? So we're going to jump into this. And I think this, to me, is the start of kind of a downward trend in free agent period. Not necessarily because of how he recovered in the offensive line this year, but I'm talking about the overall, like filling holes. And then it's just, to me, I'd have no idea, what the situation was. Did we have enough players that were just so good that we just didn't need the depth? I think it got exposed in the Super Bowl with the offensive line, but let's get into this. Mike Rimmers, obviously, Ricky Seals-Jones, Antonio Hamilton, Nick Keiser, DeAndre Washington, with re-signs of Rashad Breeland, Demarcus Robinson, Chad Henne, Sherman, and Mike Pennell. I gave this a C minus, and when I think I started to get into the video, I think I actually gave it a D plus. I was extremely frustrated with this free agent period because I understand that you have to have contracts that, align with how you're doing the salary cap. But I honestly think that this was just atrocious. What are your thoughts?
I'm not quite there. I don't think it was good. I'd probably give it like just a C in general.
Okay.
The Remmers signing for what it was, I thought was a quality move. I guess when it happened, I was ticked because I didn't think he'd be good. He turned out to be decent. Hamilton had some special teams ability. They brought in Daniel Kilgore, was a decent move. Like Ricky Seals-Jones, that experiment completely failed. I had high hopes for that. It didn't work out, but I think two guys that we haven't brought up. One of them's kind of cheating because it happened in season. Taco Charlton,
Mm-hmm.
I thought would be really interesting. He turned out to be quality before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then DeAndre Baker picking him up
Yes. Yes.
after he was released from the Giants. So I think he made some he took some swings and completely whiffed on quite a few. But he also didn't go for a home run. He kind of went with a few singles. And then it kind of showed up with the roster when so much happened. Granted, like it's hard to hold the offensive line thing against them completely. Like
Yeah.
I think this year, if they got decimated by injury, obviously no offensive line can withstand it. But this season is a lot deeper.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have a better shot to at least be replacement level or close to it. So I'd probably give it a C and
Okay.
like not a happy C, like an angry one, like maybe even a C minus. I think that I don't want to dog him too much for it,
Yeah.
but it was definitely an underwhelming free agency period.
Well, and I think too, because this one kind of gets shadowed because of the Super Bowl, and
Yeah.
I completely get that, and I understand that. Going into the next year, we ended up going to the Super Bowl too, but I just feel like maybe if you had a little bit more depth in some aspects, I completely forgot about the DeAndre Baker. I mean, that was huge. I'm hoping we can start to see him play, but
Mm-hmm.
I've completely forgot about that one. But some of these guys like Antonio Hamilton, Nick Keiser, I get what they're trying to do, but I'd have to go back and look. I would like to see what Blake Bell got with the Cowboys
Mm-hmm.
versus like what he would have, what he was maybe asking for to not get him to come back and then for us to seek a Ricky Seals-Jones and a Nick Keiser. I'd be interested to see, but if they would have brought Blake Bell back, I think as a backup, and then maybe plugged in just another piece, maybe I think I would have been okay with this. But this one kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So, 2021. Obviously, we're here. We see it. We seen it. We saw the offensive line completely get revamped. So Tooney, Long, Blythe, Reed, Blake Bell, Michael Burton replacing the retired Anthony Sherman, Tajay Sharp, and then re-signs of Mike Rimmers, Demarcus Robinson, and Nick Keiser, who is no longer on the squad. I gave this one a B plus. I almost wanted to give it an A minus just because of how important it was to just completely do the offensive line. We haven't seen Kyle Long play yet, but maybe we don't because of Trey Smith and what Joe Tooney obviously signed for. So maybe Kyle Long is just there. What are your thoughts on 2021?
Yeah, man. I think I give it a B plus.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he overpaid for Joe Tooney, which in the long run probably isn't going to be a huge deal. Kyle Long, Austin Blythe, good quality depth pieces. Jaron Reed, ideally going to work out if you're the Chiefs. You'd like to see him play well and have it open up for Chris Jones. I think that instead of it would have been nice to see them take the Jaron Reed money and throw it towards an actual defensive end
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, "Hey, Chris Jones, we're going to move you." But I trust them to make the right move. So all things considered, there it was solid. Blake Bell coming back was a good move. So replacing Sherman with a cheaper option, I believe, and Michael Burton, it was a solid. I guess Sherman retired, so it didn't matter anyway. But probably B plus. Like I think he did a solid job. Instead of the big fish of 2019 getting him a B plus, I think that it's the consistency across the board, just making a bunch of solid moves. This time, a more well-rounded, probably his most well-rounded free agency period. Even though there weren't really a ton of big splash moves outside of Tooney.
For sure. And I think we'll see, like, as we start to kind of incorporate trades and drafts that, he's been able to, in some aspects, kind of, I guess, patch it together is how I would, I guess, maybe duct tape it. I don't want to sound super negative because it's almost like, suffice for what he maybe have
Yeah.
been lacking in 2020. He was able to do this in this department. But we'll get through it because I don't want to sound super negative because I do understand, like, most people, we did win the Super Bowl and go back to the Super Bowl, but we're focusing on longevity, and that was the biggest thing that I wanted to kind of present is because we're trying to, and my best example, and you may agree with me, Jordan, we're trying to create it to where we can continuously go to the playoffs. I understand we have Patrick Mahomes, who's an absolute animal, but we're finding out that this Kansas City Chiefs team needs to be a team. And in order to win football games, you have to play as a team. And it's not always Patrick Mahomes. He can't go out there and play linebacker. He can't go out there and play safety. So you have to have a full team. And to create longevity and to continuously be good, you want to be able to hit in certain aspects. And so that's one of the biggest things I'm trying to discuss here. And that's why I wanted to do this. So we're going to jump into trades. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm excited for trades, man.
If I miss any, let me know, because I was trying to do my research, and as you can see, my hand, I'm telling you, my hand started cramping. I was going through some pain, man. So, but 2018, Alex Smith and Kendall Fuller. To me, that was the start of, really kind of the start of the whole thing. And the reason why I went with 2018, is because that's when Alex Smith got here and kind of in my opinion, started to turn around what was a very not so good Chiefs football team. Kendall Fuller, I think, was good for what he was. Towards the end, he started playing some safety, I believe, and then now he's playing with the Washington football team again. So what are your thoughts on the trades?
Yeah, man, you mentioned that one. He had the Parker Anger for Charvarius Ward. He had the Marcus Peters trade. Like, Brett Veach got busy on the trade market right out of the gate. And then the following year just went nuts.
Yeah.
The first 2 years of Brett Veach trades, the dude's aggressive. And sometimes it blows up in his face. Obviously, the Alex Smith one had to be done. You can't really keep him to be the highest paid backup in the league by $20 million or whatever he was making. To get Kendall Fuller back, he was really, really, really good in Washington. He was just good in spurts for Kansas City. Like, he wasn't anything crazy. So hindsight, not a knockout of the park like type trade, but I think a quality one. They got a draft pick out of it too. Would have been interesting to see what else they could have got or what other offers they could have got. I'd pay to be a fly on the wall for those. The Peters trade, I'm a firm believer in, if you have an unhappy star, you just get rid of him. There's no let's work it out. If it fits past that point, like if the star makes it clear I'm ticked off, I want out, get him out. Like, don't go back and forth. Don't let the media play a role in it. Don't let the morale of the team get messed up. Like, if there is a problem, take care of it and move on. And it sucks that Marcus Peters wanted out, and there was a disagreement. And I guess I shouldn't say he wanted out, but like, I've read that he wanted out after that Tennessee game, whatever. If he wants out, you get rid of him. Send him to the Rams. I believe they got like a 4th and a 2nd round pick back, which it is what it is. Would have liked to get more for a young player who was still on his rookie deal at that point. But Veach got busy. Charvarius Ward started off good. Now, not so good at cornerback, but considering Parker Anger wasn't going to do anything, solid trade. So trade-wise, year one, not the best returns on some of those, but making moves that I think had to be done.
For sure. I would 100% agree with that. 2019, and I'm sure I forgot maybe a few, but the first one to me is the one that stood out the most. I get it. It's not the flashiest, but I think what we missed on this is the fact that he kind of just got away from the Chiefs and then ended up having like a career year. And that was trading Eric Murray for Emmanuel Ogbah for the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was kind of referring to earlier when Alex Okafor and him signed up, we ended up trading for Frank Clark, which we'll talk about. So we kind of knew that one spot was going to be taken by Frank and you were going to kind of have a rotation. I think Emmanuel Ogbah, because he ends up going to the Miami Dolphins and was like top 10 or top 15 in sacks, maybe even higher than that, and really kind of just put on that next year. Eric Murray is what it was. I think if you kind of where we're at now, not saying that Ogbah would have been on this team, but I think he might have been better than some of the options we have. And I'd be interested to hear, your thoughts on that trade.
Yeah, man. I loved it when it happened. Like, it was a swing for the fences and it almost hit. Like, he played well in spurts for the Chiefs, then really put it all together once he ended up, I believe he went to Miami the year after that. Man, he he's a good player, very productive pass rusher. I don't know too much about his run defense. I haven't watched him a ton since he left, but that was a great trade. Eric Murray, I was a fan of, but it just never worked out with him. And you have to make moves like that. And then obviously there's a couple other moves that Brett Veach got a little trigger happy with, and one of them I don't have many thoughts on, and then another one I have tons of thoughts on.
Well, I think the one that you have tons of thoughts on, I may be missing the other one, but the ton of the thoughts I have Frank Clark for a first round in 2019, second in 2020, and a swap of the threes in 2020. Man, I just had a conversation with an individual, and I'm starting to question maybe a cardboard cutout would have a little bit more production than the real Frank Clark. What are your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, quickly, just the other one. It was the D Ford for a second round pick. Just
Yes.
getting him out so Frank Clark could
Yes.
come in. I that was a smart move by Veach. Ford's had health issues ever since
Yeah.
then. You got a draft pick for him. You didn't have to pay him. That was a good move. But the Frank Clark thing, I completely understand the. I think multiple things can be true at once. Frank Clark has not performed to his contract or anything close to it. Frank Clark has underperformed. Frank Clark hasn't been reliable. You shouldn't be able to make an entire case for Frank Clark based off one playoff run or one playoff play or a Super Bowl win. If the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl and Frank Clark doesn't have a great game, or even if he does and they lose, people still aren't defending Frank Clark as much. They tie him to that win so much and say they definitely would have lost without Frank Clark, all that stuff. With that said, his leadership, you can't quantify that. Does that warrant 25 million bucks? No. Is he capable of playing really good run defense? Yes, I think he even has in his last game played well. Does he have some juice rushing the passer? Yes. And I don't know exactly what he's dealing with in terms of his health issues, but I don't think people consider that enough. Like when the Chiefs traded for Frank Clark, he didn't have a condition that makes him fluctuate in weight, struggle to get healthy for game day, struggle to get on the field, struggle to stay on the field. He goes through a lot just to suit up. And I
Mhm.
don't know what exactly it is. They don't really talk about it, if it's still a thing or not. But his weight last year, he was obviously underweight by
Yeah.
like probably 20 pounds. So I wouldn't be very effective either if I was 20 pounds below my normal playing weight. So it's a bunch of unfortunate circumstances surrounding that trade. Had he not got into health trouble, would he have lived up to the contract? I still don't think he would. Like they just overpaid for him. So you can't really say the trade was worth it, even though they did win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But also, I think people hate on Frank Clark just a little bit too much without using context. I think.
I think it's from a fan perspective. I think it's just because a player, they see how much a player gets paid, and then they want to, in return, kind of connect that to like all world, first team, all
Yeah,
pro. Like,
and
and
that's fair.
yeah, and I get that, but I think, when they're maybe a little bit, in just more normal cases, maybe a little bit below above average, I guess you could say, like,
Sure.
then that's where they kind of want to scrutinize, just because that's how it works. And, I definitely believe and agree that he has not lived up to the contract, but I do think that there are some positive things. And this is something I've talked about. You do have to account for Frank Clark when he's out
Yeah.
there. And that helps out everyone else that is on that line, where when he's not out there, it may be a little bit easier to, double Chris Jones and then work on that end, whoever it may be, Mike Dana or whoever else they put out there. So I do think that there are some things, but most definitely did not live up to the contract. And I would honestly say, I would have to compare how LJ Collier's done compared to Frank Clark, because that's who they ended up taking, I believe. Um, 2021, Orlando Brown Jr. comes to the Kansas City Chiefs for a first in 2021, 2021 third, 2022 fourth, and then, 2022 fourth, and I think we got a fifth, I believe, or something, and then we got in return we got Nick Bolton
Mm,
from that trade. So I think we swapped twos maybe, or we got a two. I can't remember the full thing. I was trying to just lay out their trade.
It's a lot harder than the Mike Hughes trade. That
For sure.
I'll leave it at that. It's a lot harder to keep
Yeah.
track of than the Mike Hughes trade.
Yeah, I was well, and as you can see on this, I was at the bottom of my paper, and so I started to run up towards the top.
Yeah, you got the little flow chart going with
Yeah.
the pick swaps and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I was writing it down. So far I'm gonna say that I'm okay with this trade. I think it'll play out in the end. I think he's coming from a full on rush offense to a pass heavy offense. He's very young. He's played at the right tackle. Now he's playing left tackle. He went to an elite college. Like, I think he's a very good learner. He's a monster of a man. And I think this one will play for sure. I think it's funny that people are using the draft and the player that the Baltimore Ravens took for that first that we gave up ended up, kind of sealing the deal with Clyde's fumble. But, I think Orlando Brown Jr. will work out. And we ended up getting Nick Bolton with the deal as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I liked the move. I was fine with it. I wasn't a huge Orlando Brown guy. I was kind of almost against them doing it, just because of stuff that looked like it happened week one. Like, he was getting beat by speed. Granted, Myles Garrett is an impossible task for a guy in his first game with the team regular season wise. But you make those moves if you think that's your franchise left tackle. And if he's the franchise left tackle, he's going to get franchise left tackle money, top 5, top 3 at the position. Is he going to be a top 3 left tackle? I don't think he's going to be. Is he going to be a top 5 left tackle? Maybe. He's going to get paid a little bit more than he's worth, I think. And it's not going to be like a Frank Clark situation where he's unreliable, he's average at best, he's getting paid elite money. I think Orlando Brown can be good for the Chiefs and get elite money, and there's not a huge issue with that. With the draft compensation, the Chiefs, they got a lot back relative to how much they gave up. People use the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, this trade chart, that trade chart, said, oh, the Chiefs overpaid for Orlando Brown. I'm like, with all the pick swaps and everything and how unreliable and inconsistent draft comp is, I'm fine with what they gave up. It's not like they gave up 2 future first round picks, a current 5, a current 3, whatever, didn't swap anything. Like, the Chiefs got some draft compensation back. Yeah. They got a good player back. It's going to take time. And it's hard to judge these 2021 moves because they're so recent that we don't, like, we can look back on the Frank Clark trade and be like, that was a crappy move. Like, Orlando Brown, we could love it now. And then in a year when he like absolutely tanks or whatever this season, we'll say that was a horrible move, right, Brett Veach? So like the result is a lot easier to judge than the process, I think. And we really just have the process right now with Orlando Brown.
Yeah.
But early returns are fine. And I think that I wouldn't give it like a home run grade specifically, but I think that's like a B, potentially a B+ or A- move by him.
For sure. I in the grand scheme of trades, I gave a C+ to a B-. And I forgot about the Mike Hughes trade. I'm glad you brought that up. And so I would say probably more of, I think so far, but if you took the Honey Badger out, man, that's tough, because I want to say that I think his trades have been more effective than, man, but that's tough. Then I would say his free agencies, but his free agent signings with like the Honey Badger, and then really in 2021 signing like Tooney, Kyle Long, kind of solidifying the offensive line. I'd have to go free agents then trades. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'd give his free agent signings like a B-, maybe a B. Like, I just don't know which. And then his trades, I'd give like a C or a C+. So
I like it.
I'm not going to give his overall grade yet because we still have to talk about drafting. But I'm kind of just in I'm fine with it. There was some good, there was some bad. But the team's winning, so that naturally favors the positive end a little bit.
For sure. Now it's draft time. And again, I want to make sure everybody is aware he was not the general manager in 2017.
This first one's going to be rough.
But hey, can we set aside real quick and just talk for like just a couple seconds on just the ability of John Dorsey to scout players?
Yeah.
Like, good night. When I was doing this, I went back and I can't remember what year. What year did he start as our general manager?
I think he started
Was he
with
15, 14?
Smith. Was
Okay.
Pioli still there in 13, or was that Dorsey?
See, I can't because that's Eric Fisher, and I want to say that might have been Pioli. That might have been his last because I'm trying to remember who took D Ford. I want to say that might have been his first year was Ford because
That
the
sounds about right.
I think I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I went back and looked, and Marcus Peters,
No,
Nick,
that had to have been 13, I
yeah,
think,
okay,
because
that was the year we
they
went.
went worst to first or whatever, or went 9-7. It's hard to remember what they were, but I don't think Pioli got a crack at, because like if you're starting with a new quarterback, new head coach, I think they also brought in the new GM.
Well, and that so what I'm thinking because that was our one overall pick with Fisher. That was also the same year we took Travis Kelce, and I think that was Pioli. Am I wrong?
Man, that's tough. I don't know.
I'll have to look. That's my fault for doing that, but I because I'm just trying to just looking at this is incredible though because you have if it was D Ford, you drafted D Ford. He ended up actually being okay towards the end. Obviously, we had some issues, but he did draft LDT as well. If that's him, I know for a fact he drafted Marcus Peters, Mitch Morris, Steven Nelson, and then Raheem Nunez Roaches in the 6th round. I think that was kind of sneaky. But then you got Chris Jones, and then Demarcus Robinson, Tyreek Hill in 1 year, and then Patrick Mahomes and Kareem Hunt. Like that guy is a wizard at scouting. He just could not do a contract to save his life. But man, I went back and I was just mind blown at the players that he was able to just go out and just, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I looked it up while you were talking. It was 13 was his first year. So they hired him from Green Bay,
Oh
then brought
man.
in Reed and Smith or vice versa, whatever it was. But man, if they could literally have Pioli be like, or not Pioli, sorry, Dorsey be their director of like scouting, and have Veach and Brant Tillis do the money, the Chiefs would be unstoppable. And like Brett Veach can scout some talent, don't get me wrong, but Dorsey was just like he could take any team in the league and like build up a good team and say, all right, your window's 2 years. But like if you don't get winning in 2 years, that window slams shut quick as hell. Like you'll try to like reach your hand in and it'll snap your hand off. That window shuts so fast. So he's one of the worst ever when it comes to managing money,
Oh
but
man.
also one of the best I've seen when it comes to put either his staff was really good at scouting, or I think the latter, he was pretty good at it too.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking because the one that I question is the 2nd round pick in 2017 because whose idea was it to take Tano Passanio as a project in the 2nd round? Like who? I would love to hear who slid that card and be like, "Hey, this is our guy in the 2nd round." Because you get Kareem Hunt in the 3rd, but that's just two monsters right there. Patrick Mahomes and then Kareem Hunt, and in between you're sliding Tano Passanio. Like who decided to do that? I'm just curious on that one, but good night, man. I just couldn't believe how good he was able to draft. But 2018, we're getting into Brett Veach, and yeah, Braylon Speaks with the 2nd round, 46th pick. Derek Nottie with the 75th pick in the 3rd round. Dorian O'Daniel, 3rd round, 100th. Armani Watts, 4th. Traymon Smith and Khalil McKenzie. Oh, Braylon Speaks no longer on the team. Derek Nottie is probably, in my opinion, the best contributor from this draft and is still contributing to this day. Dorian O'Daniel has been a lifetime special teamer. Armani Watts, we might see him, here and there, but mostly special teams. Traymon Smith and Khalil McKenzie are no longer on this team. What are your thoughts on 2018?
He got one quality player out of 6 picks, and that's not good. And it's not even the fact that he only got one out of 6. He traded up for Breland Speaks, who was out of position, played out of position, not with the team. He drafted Khalil McKenzie, who was a converted defensive lineman, offensive lineman. He drafted Tremont Smith, who literally went from like cornerback to running back at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Dorian O'Daniel was just an athlete. Armani Watts had a good college career, kind of a special teams guy. So we got 2 special teamers and Derek Nottie, who is a very good 2-down run stuffing nose tackle. So you can't give him a C even on this draft. Like you can't, I don't know if you can quite give him an F per se. Like you probably could. I'd give him a D minus.
Yep.
There's no F pluses here. Like it's really, you have to literally like swing and miss on every single pick miserably, which I mean, he did on several of those, but at least O'Daniel's been a good special teamer. At least Watts has been a good special teamer. At least Nottie has been a good player overall. So I give him like a D minus on that. It was, he got off on the wrong foot with drafting. We'll just leave it at that.
And you know, Jordan, this is one thing I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on too, because I did, like I said, I listened to you guys talk yesterday, and it would have been one thing if he was completely just fresh, thrown into this, and, you know, kind of like, hey, this is my first true draft. But that's not the case. He had been with the organization. He had pushed. He's known for the fact that he pushed to get Patrick Mahomes. He obviously was learning from John Dorsey. So for him to turn around and give this type of draft, to me, that's what's confusing and kind of, you know, you can't sit there and say he was just tossed to the fire. And I think that's why I agree with your grade the most. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, it was rough. Like you said, if he was like a brand new GM who had never done the job, obviously he hadn't before, but had never been like new organization, 3 weeks before the draft, hey, you're hired, you need to do this, didn't have a scouting background, didn't like scouting, didn't do scouting, just a guy that didn't have high expectations. You give him a pass for it. And it was just bad. Like it wasn't okay. It wasn't like he struggled. It was a very bad draft. Objectively, poor job. Easily his worst. And I don't want to say that's saying something, like he's a horrible drafter. He's gotten better, I think, as the years have went on. But he started off and set the bar very, very low. And people were salty about the next year's draft. And I think some people still are. But I honestly don't have a huge problem with it.
You know, I think, and that's what I wanted to dive into, because that's when I really started to jump in and kind of do my own scouting and really like pay way more attention to the players that were coming out. And it almost just became so fun for me that this was the year. And so for me to like kind of do my research and understand that DK Metcalf did have an injury but fell, I was just pounding the table so hard to draft him. We ended up taking Mecole Hardman with the 56th pick in the second round. We took Juan Thornhill immediately following that with the 63rd pick. Kalen Saunders, Rashad Fenton, Darwin Thompson, and Nick Allegretti. I'm not going to like jump on that like, oh, we could have had this guy, but you know what? Actually, I'm going to. DK Metcalf should be in a Chiefs uniform. I don't care that the whole situation with Tyreek Hill was a problem and you were trying to replicate a Tyreek Hill. DK Metcalf provided such, not only at what he was able to do in college, but he ran just a freak time at the combine, put on and did his thing. For me, you know, yes, he's had back injuries, but you can't sit there and say that, and this is my thing, you take Mecole there and say, hey, we're going to pass on DK because maybe of some health issues, but then you draft Trey Smith in 2021. So I'm going to set that aside. But to me, it's like, man, I just don't understand why that was there. And there were some other guys, obviously, we're seeing now. Terry McLaurin's coming out. You know, Deontay Thompson, I think, is there. Johnson, excuse me. You know, there's some other guys. I'm okay still with the Juan Thornhill. I think that I was a huge fan of Juan Thornhill coming out of Virginia. I really was. I was excited. I actually screamed like a little girl when they drafted him. But man, Kalen Saunders, Rashad Fenton, Darwin Thompson, Nick Allegretti. I'm a little torn on Kalen Saunders just because, yeah, it's cool he can do a backflip, but can he play the defensive tackle position? Rashad Fenton, I don't think they give him enough. Maybe there's something there. Darwin Thompson obviously no longer on the team, and I think Nick Allegretti has obviously overperformed the 7th round pick that he, 216 that he was taken at. What are your thoughts on 19?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna start in reverse order.
Okay.
I think he did really good in the later rounds. Rashad Fenton performing above his draft slot. Darwin Thompson, kind of a numbers game. Like, he's not a bad player. The Chiefs very well could have kept him had they not brought in a running back this offseason. Nick Allegretti, probably a below average starter, but
Mm-hmm.
a decent reserve to have on your team. I think he far outperformed his draft slot. Colin Saunders, the jury's out still, which is weird because he's in year 4 now, or no,
Mm-hmm.
year 3. Um, Kind of a numbers game with him too. He's not going to get that big opportunity. He played really well in the preseason. Athletic guy, but considering the draft slot again, not a huge whiff. Juan Thornhill, man, he's a good player. I believe in Juan Thornhill. I think he has Pro Bowl potential. It's running out of time to see if he's going to reach it, and that may not even be his fault. And then Hardman, I I get the Terry McLaurin argument, and a lot of teams passed on him, so that might have just been they
Yeah.
didn't see something coming out of college, so I don't hold that against Veach. The DK Metcalf thing, I get 100% he was right there, and I get that he would be a good player with the Chiefs, but I don't think DK Metcalf is DK Metcalf if he gets drafted by the Chiefs. He just plays a brand of football. He needed an offense that was going to say, screw it. We're going to have you run straight lines. We're going to throw you the ball deep down the field. We're going to give you slants and let you just do damage over the middle. Like in the RPO game, would he have been a great slant target to Patrick Mahomes? Yes. But does he really dominate the underneath routes? Does he do a lot of work over the middle of the field with intricate route running? Are his hands super consistent? Stuff that Sammy Watkins could do for the Chiefs. Like, I still think he'd be a dominant presence in some way, shape, or form. He'd be a great deep threat. Like Hardman's a great deep threat, same thing. And I do think that I I'd pay to be a fly on the wall for the Hardman conversation, given the Tyreek Hill thing, because if they were looking for a 1-to-1 replacement in the event that Hill was going to get kicked out of the NFL or off the team or whatever, Hardman very inexperienced. That's what got me. They could have got him in the 3rd round, I think.
Yeah.
They could have maybe even got him later into the 4th round. He was a guy that he's fast. He had return experience. He didn't have much experience playing wide receiver. He was a converted cornerback. I didn't really get the pick then, and now looking back does make it worse. I don't think it was a complete and utter failure by him because Hardman is a somewhat respectable 3rd option in an offense, and I think that's, or I guess he would have been 4th when Watkins was there. Hoping he can be a 3rd option now. It does burn, though, if you're a Chiefs fan, to see who went instead of Hardman, or who was still on the board when Hardman went. So a lot of context that needs to be provided there. But man, DK Metcalf, like I said, I don't think he's quite as dominant as he is right now, but still, you plug him into the Chiefs offense and just the threat of DK Metcalf, probably just as effective, if not more effective, than McCole Hardman.
For sure. And, I agree because I would be interested to see how he would do in this offense. But man, I mean, just the ability to play football and the game, and I think the coaching style of Andy Reid, I think would have went well with a DK Metcalf, and
Mhm.
when you see like in his situation, I think when you have guys that are successful and you have like a mentorship of like Travis Kelce, who has matured as he's gotten older, you have guys like Patrick Mahomes who probably would have just done incredible things. Like, them two working together, I think would have been just insane. I think that one's always going to burn. And I'm not a Mecole hater by no means. I didn't like the pick there. And I agree with you. I think you could have got him later. Um, Man, that one's tough because that one's a tough one for me. And I think that draft though also is where he started to kind of turn things around as we
Yep.
jump into 2020. Um, This one still might sting for some people. It doesn't really bother me so much. I think you and I have talked about it. I'm kind of numb to the situation. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire taken after the Super Bowl win at 32. Willie Gay, 63 in the second round. Lucas Niang, third. Fourth round was L'Jarius Sneed, Mike Dana, and then Bo Peep Keys. Man, I really like this draft. I do. I still think it's the start of something that I think hopefully the trend stays. I wasn't okay with Clyde. I really was. And when Patrick Mahomes is the guy that says, "Get me that guy," I think you got to do it. And I think we'll eventually see it play out. Willie Gay, I think he's going to be a monster. We just got to keep him healthy. Lucas Niang, we're seeing him actually be an okay right tackle. This is his first true year. L'Jarius Sneed, I mean, it's L'Jarius Sneed. Holy smokes. Mike Dana, I think for where he was drafted, I think he does well enough on the Chiefs. And I wish they would have kept Bo Peep Keys. What are your thoughts on the 2020?
Yeah, man, I like it. I think that it was maybe his best draft, depending on how this one turns out.
Yeah.
Actually, this one may be a little bit better, but anyway, the Clyde pick, dude, I was all in on Clyde in the second round just because he was a running back, and I didn't want them to take a running back first. But they drafted him. I was super excited for it. I still believe in him to not be like an elite running back, but be a good one for the Chiefs, and I think that's okay. Willie Gay Jr., I like him a lot. Lucas Niang, I think he's solid. L'Jarius Sneed, like late round Brett Veach he hits. Like
Yes.
he gets very good value late. Sneed, Dana, and Keys. Keys obviously not with the team anymore, practice squad, whatever ended up happening there. He got claimed by, was it the
Colts.
Jets that claimed him? Oh, it was the Colts. And so who went to the Jets?
Tim Ward.
Okay, Tim Ward. So I knew they both went to the Jets Colts. I didn't know which order. So Mike Dana, really good run defender. Like I think that for a fifth round pick to get a guy that can play first and second down and set the edge, have a little bit of pass rush juice, that's a huge win. I think L'Jarius Sneed a huge win, even if he's not an elite player, even if he's just a good one, huge
Mm-hmm.
win. Niang in round 3, I think that can be a win. Willie Gay Jr.'s second round, that can be a win. The Clyde one's tough to call it a win per se, because then you get into the running back value conversation that I really don't want to have because
Yeah.
people are going to get mad. Um, they just have to get over it. Like he's on the team. Yes, he was a first round pick. No, I don't think they're going to give him a big contract. So you basically got a rental good running back for 4 years for a first round pick. I don't think they exercise the 5th-year option on him because that's going to be expensive. Like it just happens. Like that is the pick they went with. Don't hold it against the player, hold it against the team, you know? But I do think overall, especially considering the late value that he got, that this was a pretty good draft by Brett Veach, and that's without knowing kind of what the future of Clyde is going to be, what the future of Willie Gay is going to be, how long Niang will hold up, how good Sneed's going to be, stuff like that.
My after my first initial season of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I kind of started to go back and really kind of wonder if maybe they should have gave him the first year to really kind of learn and work his way in and be more of a rotation, where I think they kind of, because he was that 32nd overall pick, he was a first round, it was immediately like, hey, this guy has to almost be like our starter. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering if they would have found a way to maybe, I guess, let him kind of learn more. And I'm not saying that he hasn't learned the system, but I'm saying like just kind of see how the NFL plays. Maybe that it would have been a little bit more different take. And I think people may not scrutinize him as much because, from my knowledge, that fumble that he had in that Ravens game was his first in the entire
Yep.
in his entire playing career for the
Mhm.
Chiefs. Um, and I think people just, again, he's given a title because of where he was drafted. And I think people immediately want to say he's not that guy. And it's like, I mean, he's a dual threat. He has the ability to catch out of the backfield and run. He's who Patrick Mahomes wanted. I think we're seeing what happens when you don't cater to your quarterback in Seattle and some other places. You're seeing what happens. I mean, I'm 100% okay with that pick. And I think there's a lot more glaring issues than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think it's crazy that some people think that he is just a terrible player. I mean, it is what it is, but man, I don't see that take.
Yeah, and it comes back to the running back value thing. Like people that hate running backs are going to hate Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah.
People that love running backs are going to love him. The people that just accept it for what it is, like me and you, we hope that he plays better because he looks like a fun. He was a great player in college. He was
Yeah.
elite in college. Then the thing for me is like I don't really know who to blame. Like, is it him for not being a great athlete? Is it the Chiefs for not utilizing him? Is it him being injured? Is it the offensive line being bad last year? Like, he was a decent player last year, had some good moments. He's had 2 rough games, like out of 2. We're operating on a 2-game sample size. If he has 2 more bad games in a row, then maybe kind of think about it a little more. He could easily pop off for 2 weeks in a row, and all those people are going to say he's fixed. He could have 5 bad games in a row. Like literally, the sample size until you're like in late October or early November, I don't give a crap what your team looks like. Like if you're a contending team, if you're a bad one and you look bad, you can be written off. But if you're a good team, like
Hmm.
predominantly or perennially that struggles a little bit in different areas, Chiefs defense a few years ago took 10 games to gel. Granted, they had a lot of bits and pieces moving along, but if the offensive line looks bad for 3 more weeks and Chiefs fans throw a fit about it, remember, like it takes time for stuff to work out. And maybe Clyde's ankle is still bothering him a little bit. Guys play through stuff all the time that doesn't get listed on the injury report. Um, it's just context is key.
Yeah,
Patience is key. And I think patience is a good theme with this draft class as well.
for sure. Most definitely. And I mean, we saw a terrible, terrible draft year in 2018. I think you can't be as critical in this year because I think you're starting to create some depth pieces, but also getting some good players out of this too. And that leads us to 2021, which is the final year so far. Nick Bolton, obviously the second pick, which was the part of the Orlando Brown trade. Creed Humphrey, Joshua Kendo, Noah Gray, Cornell Powell, and Trey Smith. Man, I kind of want to hear your take first, and then I'll kind of supplement mine because I'm kind of interested to see what your thoughts are. So what do you got?
Yeah, man. I didn't like the Nick Bolton pick, admittedly, when they made it. Like they already had investments at linebacker. He wasn't a 3-down guy. He was more of a 2-down thumper. Now with him doing more with Willie Gay Jr. injured, it's exposing him in coverage. He's not a good coverage linebacker. I like Nick Bolton still. I think that he can fill a very specific role for a team. But to spend your first pick on that or whatever, not great. Creed Humphrey, he's going to be a great center. Trey Smith at the end, he's going to be a great guard. Like those two alone prevent Veach from getting anything less than like a C plus. I think,
Hmm.
even if the rest of them don't work out. Kando, he was a swing for the fences, and he had a good athletic profile. It's going to take him a long time to come along. For him to be the 4th, 5th round pick, whatever he was, I am totally fine with that swing. Um, at any position, athleticism is important, but I think at edge, more than anything, you have to really be an explosive athlete.
Hmm.
And he tested off the charts. Noah Gray, I think he has the potential to be a good backup tight end for the Chiefs. Cornell Powell, man, I drank the Kool-Aid big time. I was like, by the end of the year, Cornell Powell's going to be taking number 2 wide receiver reps. He's going to be the guy next year. He has the size. He looks like Sammy Watkins. He practices looking like Sammy Watkins. And then he didn't even make the team. He's on the practice squad. And I still think he has potential to be a X-ish wide receiver, but I don't know what the success rate is of guys who get drafted, end up on the practice squad, come back up, and then carve out long-term NFL careers with those teams. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the
Yeah.
likelihood is. I don't know what the Chiefs receiver room is going to look like a year from now. But Veach got 3 current starters out of that draft. I think long term, one of Kando Gray Powell could turn into a legitimate contributor. whether that's Noah Gray being a decent backup, whether that's Cornell Powell being a decent third option, whether it's Kando turning into a starting edge. To get four, or I guess three, yeah, to get three starters right off the bat and then a few lottery tickets, I think all things considered, this was a pretty good draft by Veach.
I want to ask you, would a good comparison for Cornell Powell be Byron Pringle? Only
That's
because
an interesting one.
because we talked about like the practice squad and kind of just the approach to kind of how they're getting to the roster.
Yeah, no, I was thinking like not in terms of the journey because I don't know where this guy was drafted, like Jason Avant almost in
Yeah,
terms of the like he's never going to be a great number one option or even play as a number one. He probably isn't your number two, but he's like that sneaky like the opposing team's like, damn it, there goes that guy. Like he somehow got open there. He pops off in a playoff game for like 4 key catches or something, and you're like, I didn't even know he was on the field. Like
yeah,
that type of dude. Um, that's a decent comp. Like not in terms of play style, but like the journey to
yeah.
becoming an active contributor. And Pringle was the same way. I didn't even know Pringle was on the field for the snap that he caught his touchdown for. I didn't even notice him pre-snap, and then all of a sudden I saw Byron Pringle get a touchdown catch. I think that Powell, he just looked the part
Yeah,
off his college tape of a future productive pro, but he was a fifth-year senior. He had half a good season. Like part of it was with Trevor Lawrence not even on the field. So it was interesting. But I think that's interesting. It is. I think that it could be one of those things where he just kind of works his way up, and I'll have to temper my expectations, obviously, because I was ready to call him the number 2 wideout by
I
the end of
was
the
too.
year or beginning of next year.
Yep,
But that shows how fast life comes at you in the NFL.
for sure. And I think it like for us, it was because we were. I'm speaking for me, but I was so excited to see them make a move in the receiver position, and then
And then they didn't.
when they didn't, and we drafted one. So I'm like, man, they got the guy,
Yeah.
and so that was my take on it. But and again, I think for him to make the practice squad and to probably learn and keep working in this offense, I think he might end up producing, and it'll be interesting to see next year where where he's at and things like that. But I agree, man. I think you got Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey. I think Noah Gray's my guy that will sneak on and become something. He's not going to overtake Travis Kelsey, but he'll contribute. I think eventually we'll see him getting some Blake Bell touchdowns in the end zone, like kind of that sneaky peel off and kind of just hesitate and wait.
Yeah.
But I've always liked Noah Gray. I think he runs good routes and stuff. I think he's one that's learning the tight end position still too. But would you say, because we're going to give a final grade of, would you say that this was his best draft?
I think 2020 could end up being
Okay.
his best draft, but the stain of taking a running back in the first round, even if he just turns out to be okay, that's a legitimate one. But then the stain of taking a thumper linebacker and giving you one of the highest paid linebackers and back-to-back second round picks at that spot is rough. But to complete the offensive overhaul on the line, at least with Humphrey and Smith, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like to get Creed Humphrey was huge. To get Trey Smith was even bigger, considering the value. And again, it's a result thing. Like
Yeah.
in a year, we could look back and say Joshua Kando didn't, like right now in September of 2021. We have hope. Like Kando could turn out to do this. Gray could turn out to do that. Powell could do this. Then I bet if in September 2022 someone asks us, we're going to say, well, that Cornell Powell didn't do jack squat his rookie year. Like Joshua Kando played 5 snaps. Like Noah Gray barely saw the field. So
Yeah.
it's so difficult to give an opinion on something you don't even know too much about yet. Like not that we haven't done our homework, but that they literally haven't been
Yeah.
seeing the field. So I think 2020 was good, and I think 2021 will be good. But it's hard to like single out one from those two and be like that's the one.
For sure. All right, it's time, man. It's time. My final overall grade for Brett Veach is a C plus. Um, and the reason is because for me, honestly, it's about drafting. And again, like kind of what I went on a little soapbox there for a second, is having the ability to create longevity because, we see you and I both see it because of what we're trying to accomplish. And you see people are like, oh, we need to go trade for that guy. We need to sign this guy. An elite person either is available or they hit the free agent market and people are like, we need to sign him. So I'm okay with that concept. But if you're wanting to do that, and then this is a perfect case, we're trying to re-sign the Honey Badger, you have to be able to solidify positions with draft picks, and they have to be able to either be very good depth pieces or they have to almost be starters. And I feel like he's starting to get that going, and that's why I gave him a C plus because I think we're starting to see that. But when you make trades like Frank Clark, and we're seeing some of those other ones, we have yet to see Orlando Brown fully play out. That's why I have to give him the grade I feel like I have to, because I understand we have to pay the Honey Badger. We have to go pay Orlando Brown. Tyreek Hill is coming back up if you're going to consider re-signing him. And there's some others that are starting to trickle back in. If you're going to do that, you have to be able to draft, and that's why I gave him a C plus. So what is your overall grade?
Man, I give him a strong C plus based on that stuff, but what gives him like a weak to middling B minus for me is we're gonna maximize the window every year,
Yeah.
but also not completely screw ourselves long term. Like he has the Chris Jones long term, he has the Mahomes long term, he has the Kelsey, he has this, he has that. He's going to have Orlando Brown, he has Frank Clark, but every year he gives them flexibility. He gives them options. You never head into the offseason saying, well, the Chiefs have $5 in cap room. They can go buy a Subway sandwich, but they won't be able to do anything because Veach can work around it.
Yeah.
And the stuff, I guess Brent Tillis deserves a ton of credit for this, but we never know exactly who's in charge of what, who was responsible for this, that, and the other. His ability to keep the flexibility while maximizing the window, because usually those don't go hand in hand. Like you either maximize the window and pull a New Orleans Saints and then have negative $5 billion in cap space and have to cut half your roster or whatever. Or you play conservatively and you're like the Indianapolis Colts and you have all this cap room, you have a good young team. Then by the time the team's ready to compete and you're a quarterback away, you have to pay Darius Leonard, you have to pay Quentin Nelson, you have to pay this guy, that guy, and the other. So usually it's one or the other. You either play the long game and you hope that some things go right, or you play the short game and you hope some things don't go wrong. And I think that's what Veach is doing, kind of saying, if it sucks this year and this falls through, it's okay because I have this, and this long term. And if this long term thing doesn't work out, it's okay because right now we have this, and this. So like to have Patrick Mahomes long term with the contract design the way it is huge. To have Chris Jones is huge. To have Kelsey is huge. Pending a Tyrann Mathieu extension, that will be great. Tyreek Hill, same thing. Brown. They're going to have a very top-heavy roster, but if he can keep improving draft-wise, if he can stop being quite as aggressive with trades, I think. Like, I don't think they can make many more big splash trades. And then if he can make more around the edges free agent signings that maybe don't cater to the special teams as much and say we need this guy to be a third down contributor or a sub package guy or a depth guy, rather than we're going to bring this guy in and say he's depth, but he's really a special teams player. I could move him up to a B. So like right now, give him a B minus. I think that there's good and bad with Brett Veach, and the result definitely changes that. Like if the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl this year, it's going to be hard to not give him that B minus. And if the Chiefs somehow the wheels fall off the wagon, Tyrann Mathieu leaves, Tyreek Hill says he doesn't want to sign an extension, something like that, then it gets worse. So C plus B minus is about right. Like I don't get the whole he gets an A+, he gets a free pass for everything because they won a Super Bowl. That logic is so flawed. You can't do that, but also you can't say he sucks
Correct.
because of this, that, and the other. I think literally, like if he took a test as a GM, he'd get like a 79 to like 82.
Yeah,
And that, given the roster they have, that's good enough to put you in a good spot every year.
for sure. I 100% agree with that. And I want to have you back on the show and eventually talk to you about should we have kept Chris Ballard or should we have gotten Brett Veach. So
Sheesh.
that'll
Chris
be another.
Ballard's the man.
Yeah, man. He's talk about someone who can draft. Holy
Mhm.
smokes. But yeah, man, that'll be for a different time. But Jordan, I really appreciate you coming on. This was one of the most incredible, I think, interviews I've had because of one, how in depth it was, but I think it's one that most Chiefs fans kind of don't necessarily think about in depthly the way we have, or at least presented this. And I think it's important to keep accountability for the higher ups because yes, we are winning Super Bowls, but we're trying or winning a Super Bowl and going to Super Bowls, but we're trying to create longevity. You want to do this year in and year out, and not be like the Kansas City Royals where you're a flash in the pan and then you're still struggling to try to get back there now. So I think that's where we can be critical and kind of evaluate and dissect like we did. So I appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course, man. I truly appreciate it. It's always a good time, and I think that anytime you're able to have those conversations that are critical but also fair,
Mm-hmm.
and also like where we just call it how we see it. There's
Yeah,
no like we're gonna like embellish this or we're gonna be too harsh about that. We try to be diplomatic but also honest in what we see. So it's always good stuff. Thank you, man.
for sure. And you guys know how we wrap this out. I appreciate you checking out the Beat of KC. And as always, have a good day.